Yo, what is up, guys? I am Josh, and this is hashtag Life Choices.
I am Anath. This is the podcast where we help you make the best life choices.
And I am David, here to welcome you to Movie Mondays.
Lastly, I'm Lemuel, and this is our weekly segment where we talk in depth about movies. We're going to talk about what's cool, what wasn't, and what we can learn.
So we're just going to talk about movies. We're all just going to chat about it, what we liked about it. Okay, so this week we'll be talking about Captain Marvel. And so to those that haven't watched, we're just going to focus on scenes. And then we're going to talk about what we can learn from those scenes. So I know you two haven't watched yet.
We haven't watched
We're
it.
going to watch it tomorrow.
So
I just realized right now that I haven't seen the movie. We're gonna talk about it.
yeah, anyway, so Anath and I have seen it.
And we will not spoil it.
Yes.
Or at least we'll try our best.
Yeah,
not
so
to.
we're
There's no turning back now.
yeah, so we're gonna give like a summary, basically on the whole thing, but we won't focus on like I guess crucial plot points. So basically, Captain Marvel focuses on the character of Carol Danvers. So Carol Danvers is an Air Force pilot who basically was very normal, if you could. That's the kind of label you could put on her. A normal person that had a extraordinary job, Air Force pilot. And basically, there was an accident, and because of this, that is what granted her her powers. And then later on, because of that, she was actually kidnapped to another planet. And I won't go deep into detail of that, but then that's where the movie's turning point is. She gets kidnapped to another planet. She was deceived to think that she was one of those that were on that planet. They were called the Kree. So she was raised and basically brought up to think that she was a Kree soldier. And from there, basically, the movie starts to unfold. And I guess so I think we also want to point out to the audience, every week we're gonna have one person talk about a movie and like basically what we can learn. And I guess I'll be the first one to talk about it this week. It's kind of hard to give a summary when you can't spoil anything. But basically, Captain Marvel or Carol had this like a mentor that trained her, and his name is Yon Rog. So throughout the movie, this mentor has been trying to train her up in the way that the Kree intended her to be. But yeah, so at the beginning of the movie, so this is the first point. So this is when we start talking about what we can learn from the movie. So the first thing that I learned from the movie was do not abandon emotions. So in the beginning of the movie, they were sparring, and this mentor, Yon Rog, who is a Kree, always kept telling her, hey, control your, not even control, but like suppress your emotion or stop your emotion constantly. Always reminding her that, you know, emotions are bad, emotions are not good, and constantly reminding her, hey, you can't let your emotions in. But as I was listening to that, I realized that that's actually not very correct, because emotions are something that you can use to your advantage. It's something that is, I would say, morally neutral. It's not bad nor good. It depends on how you use it. So I guess like oftentimes in life right now, we are told that our feelings betray us, but they're actually there for a reason. If we don't feel certain things, we can't act a certain way. And later on in the movie, we actually find out that they've been using that, I guess, that technique of telling her to repress her emotion as a way to suppress her power. Because only when she was actually able to manage her emotion was she able to realize her true power. And I think this is something we, as people, we all face, that the problem of, okay, we have emotions, and oftentimes they will say emotions are bad, but then why are they there in the first place? What do you guys think about that?
I think emotions, there is two parts to it. There are the emotions that will lead you to making the wrong decision, and there are the emotions that will help you bless others, for example. And so when you look at the Bible, one of the things that we're always taught to do is have compassion. And compassion, it's an emotion you have towards someone else. And when you have that compassion, it leads you to act in a certain way in order to help someone. But on the other hand, you can have emotions that will take you away from what you believe in. It can make you choose the wrong decisions, and as a result can affect you in a negative way. So I definitely think that it's a two-sided thing, and emotions are there for a good reason, but we need to be able to discern which emotions are good, which emotions do we act on.
So Anath gave a good example of good emotion, compassion. Like when you see a person who is in need and you just want to reach out, give a simple gift just to tell that person, hey, you're not forgotten. Someone's there for you. We're here for you and want to show you some love. Perhaps a bad emotion that you can say is like lust or infatuation, when you're so obsessed with this certain person that you wouldn't do anything apart from thinking about that person, and then that will lead you to certain acts that are not really good for you and are not really good for those who are around you. You can imagine this stuff people do because of that emotion.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you there, because in my life I know that some of the biggest mistakes I've made are because of my choice to listen to what I was feeling rather than what I knew was supposed to be done. And because I based all my decisions on emotions which I would categorize as negative because it contradicted my moral values, I ended up making the wrong decision. And I just want to segue to something Josh said, and that was he mentioned that there's a battle between controlling your emotions and suppressing it. And I think that one of the reasons why emotions allow you to make the wrong decision is you sometimes suppress it, saying, I don't want to feel this.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is you push it deeper and deeper
It bottles
inside.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And eventually that bottle's gonna explode and you're gonna mess up even more, right? And what allowed Captain Marvel to really rise to her greatest potential was when she was able to control those emotions. And it is when you're able to understand that this is my moral belief, this is what I want to do with my life. As a result, your emotions are filtered, and then you can make the right decision. You're not deceived by what you think or what you feel. You are making the right decisions based on based on who you are. And I think that the idea of filtering those emotions is very crucial if we're going to make decisions, like we said, that are based off emotions, because emotions are clearly there for a good reason.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Inat just said. You go into your decisions as your whole self. I think we discussed in a recent show, Josh.
On a radio show every
yeah,
Saturday.
actually, we
So I just
discussed.
want to plug that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
could check us out on facebook.com/lifechoicesph, where we have a weekly Facebook Live. It's actually in tandem with the radio show we're having, but if you guys want to check that out, apart from the podcasts that we have, you can check us out at facebook.com/lifechoicesph. Anyway, you were saying, Lamo?
Yeah, I was saying that many times I think we have to draw a line a bit. I think something about the emotions may come off in a different way to some of our listeners.
Yeah.
At least in my upbringing, I'm almost taught to always suppress at least the first impulse.
Yeah.
I'm not taught to deny my emotions. Oftentimes, I react to things immediately, and that is what's dangerous and what I should definitely avoid. Because let's talk about it in terms of an emotion, anger.
Yeah.
Like if someone who you're quite annoyed with suddenly triggers you to react, almost certainly what your reaction will be is destructive, or at least not good. So in that sense, that's the emotion that I'd rather suppress.
Yeah.
Like what maybe Captain Marvel's mentor was telling her to do, to not act on that impulse. But yeah, I just wanted to draw the line between impulse and drive, because I think most of what emotion, the positive emotions you're referring to, lead you to a course of action that's constructive, lead you to something that would make you make good decisions, and those are more long-term than the impulse.
Yeah, I guess I want to add to that sometimes we have emotions, and these emotions, they have a default action. So if you're angry, your default is to lash back at that person, because these actions are actually our way of, I guess, what's the word? Output, trying to release the tension that's inside, especially when it comes to anger. So we want to lash out at the people that angered us. But actually, like what Einat said, we can't let it bottle up inside, because at some point, no matter how hard we repress it, the thing that we wanted to avoid is actually the thing that will happen, which is we will explode. So, what is the way we deal with this? I was, I guess, raised with the thought process that, hey, when you have emotions that you have to deal with, what you do is instead of suppressing it, you address it. And by addressing it, it doesn't mean that you have to, let's say when you're angry, you lash back at that person, but rather like you find a different way to, like a different avenue wherein you can release that. So say for example, you could be into sports. When you're in sports, you could release your anger there. I was in Taekwondo before, so when I was angry at someone, I would let it out on like the kick pad or like the dummy, because you know you're not hurting anyone by doing that, but you're relieving that tension within you. And when it comes time to face the person that you're angry with, the tension and the initial impulse of lashing back at that person is more or less removed, and what comes out is a calmer version of yourself. And basically, I guess I want to say that because our emotions are not useless. They have a point, and it's our like defense mechanism of us, of our bodies, our minds, our hearts telling us what is wrong, what we don't feel all right about. But if we completely reject it, then we won't really know those things, and we won't be able to act on it accordingly. So you can be angry, but your first action doesn't have to be towards the person, but you could channel it elsewhere. So when you face the person again, your response is, how can we solve this, rather than how can I beat this guy up? Because oftentimes that's what happens to us, right? Like we let it go into something negative.
Yeah, and I think what you said is very true. It's about how we channel our emotions.
Yes.
And I want to tie that back to what I said earlier, is when you know what you believe in, when you have that set moral guideline, it allows you to filter those emotions out. And as a result, your decisions aren't based on just emotion, it's based on how those emotions react to what you believe in. And so in my life, and I guess in all your lives, the Bible is our moral guideline, right? And the emotions we feel are filtered through that belief, that knowledge from the Bible. And as a result, we channel our emotions into certain actions which keep us aligned with what we believe in. And so something Lem said was the whole idea of like reacting quickly to something. You know, when it's anger, we don't want to react quickly. And I was reminded of something I learned in my Soc Sci class, and it's we have two types of thinking. There's system 1 and system 2. And system 1 thinking is the thinking that happens very spontaneously. It's like, for example, if I say hello to you, you immediately say hello back. It's the instantaneous. But then there's system 2 thinking, which is the thinking that takes time. It's the
deeper
thinking,
yeah,
much deeper. It's very rational, and that is really the type of thinking we need to be doing with our emotions. So without just responding instantly when we feel something, there needs to be a little moment of silence and to process what you're feeling, and then after processing it, you can make the decision, what am I going to do with these emotions? And again, those decisions are made more clear when you've got something to filter out those emotions,
So-
which in our case is our knowledge from the Bible.
You can. I think, like, I don't know if you guys believe this, but I believe that we don't really control what emotions we have. It's how those emotions manifest. That's what we can control. Because when you're angry initially, it's like it's there, like that rage, but then it doesn't have to manifest in something that is bad. But I want to move on to the second point, and that is that your past shouldn't simply be forgotten. And I think throughout the entire movie, one of the crucial plot points is that Carol does not remember her past. Something that happened with her when she was with the Kree kind of like wiped her memory, and she couldn't remember everything about her past. And she brought this up with her mentor. She was like, hey, I've been having these dreams about a past that I seem to have had, but I don't remember any of this. And then that mentor, Yon-Rogg, will always remind her, it's like, hey, just forget about it. Don't think about your past. Just shut it out. And constantly reminding her, hey, don't think about it. Shut it out. But just like with emotions, her true power was realized when she was able to look at her past and see what she can do with that past moving forward. Because our past isn't actually something that is negative. And yeah, at some point you should forget about certain things, but then you also need to learn to look back, because what you learned then will always carry to your future. And our national hero Jose Rizal actually said something that's very nice, and I'll translate it in English. But basically, he says, those that don't look back at the past will never arrive at their destination. Because if we don't remember where we messed up, if we don't remember what went right, then we won't be able to bring those things towards the things that come up in the future. So if we messed up and we see something similar coming up, we're like, oh no, like we don't really remember what happened in our past. So it's crucial to remember certain parts of it and seeing what we can learn from the past instead of simply rejecting everything that happened before.
Yeah. And I was reminded of something I heard Ravi Zacharias say when he visited our church. He was speaking specifically about the past. And what often happens is when we make, I'm going to focus on mistakes for a moment. When we make mistakes in the past, the automatic response is, okay, I've made a mistake, now forget about it and move on. But when looking at my life, those moments of growth have taken place when I was able to look at the past and understand what I did and how I can change it next time, you know? When you're able to analyze and evaluate how I can make better decisions based on the bad decisions I've made before, it really helps you grow and it unlocks your potential. You can become a better person because it's the past that shapes you to be better in the future. So forgetting the past is not a good idea, even if the past was horrible, because the past will show you something about yourself and it'll help you grow in the future.
There's actually this quote that says, well, I'm not sure if it's actually a quote, and I don't know where it came from, but it says, experience is the best teacher.
Yeah.
Experience is the best teacher. And someone I've heard made it even better. It says, evaluated experience is the best teacher. So you don't just like experience a lot of things, but you look back at them and say, what did I learn from this? What can I continue? What can I improve? And what should I stop?
Yeah, and this reminds me of something that I stumbled upon before. It's something that Google as a company does every time that they encounter failure. It's called the post-mortem protocol, or I don't know if it's protocol, but basically the process is called post-mortem. So basically every time they face a problem, they have an actual system in place that they sit down with the person that encountered the failure. So they have 3 steps. First is identify the problem. So you try to see where things went wrong, what is it that failed. And then after that, the second is keep a record. So keep a record, basically you have to be able to take note of these things so that when they happen in the future, you have something to look back at. Okay, so before you end up failing again, you see, okay, this is where I failed last time. I can correct it this time. And the last thing is to promote growth and not blame. So those are things that we can apply to our lives also as we look at the past. We try to see where things went wrong. Then we keep a record and then we promote our growth and not blame ourselves that, hey, our past was bad and I can never move on from that. And so before I move on to the third point, is there anything anyone else wants to add to that? Okay, so the third point is the importance of identity. Because in the movie, Carol isn't actually a Cree. She is actually a human. And basically, she's been raised and she's been trained to think that she's a Cree. And so she submits to like the Cree ways and like how the Cree does it. But in the final battle with like the big villain, which I'm just not going to reveal so that it doesn't get spoiled, the main thing she says was, I am human. And she declares that as she basically obliterates this villain. And why that struck me so much is because the narrative we tell ourselves, who we think we are, who we believe we are, fuels so much of how we can respond to things in the future. Because if you say, I'm a failure, and that's your identity, when you encounter problems, you're just basically going to say, well, there's nothing I can do about it, it's who I am. But if you simply say, I am somebody who encountered a failure, when you're faced with another problem, you can say, oh, I encountered that before, but that's not who I am. I can do better this time. And that's just something I realized. It's who we think we are that matters so much when we face problems of that sort.
Yeah, and I want to do a quick segue here. With globalization and with the rise of the internet, one of the biggest things that have been taking place is individuals trying to find their own unique identity. And like David said, like Josh said, we need to be able
Yeah, it's really confusing. For the record, since this is our first podcast episode, David and I have the same first and second name, so we mix this up a lot. So bear with us. I'm David and oh no, he's David. My bad.
We're both David.
We're both David. So I'm Josh. and this other guy is David. So it gets really confusing. So bear with us for this. Yeah. Anyway, you were saying.
Okay, so as Josh was saying,
Oh, I forgot.
We're all finding our identity.
We're all finding our identity. Just like this, exactly. We're finding our identity,
Yeah.
and somehow there's a mix-up.
Yeah.
Who's Josh and who's David?
Yes, okay, I remember now. So, as Josh was saying, we need to understand who we are, and we look at the past to understand that and say, now I can do better.
Okay.
But one thing we need to realize is that who we think we are is very limited compared to who God tells us who we are.
Yeah.
And I remember sharing this at church one day. The message was about the power of words. And one of the points I had was to speak His promises. And what that means is the Bible is full of God's promises to us. And as a result, when you're able to live knowing that this is what God has promised to us, we confirm our identity as His children. And as a result, we can overcome all of the challenges that are thrown at us. Growing up, I used to get bullied and roasted a lot, but it never affected me because I knew that I was loved by God. I knew that God was my strength. And so, yes, we want to find our own identity, but one thing I've realized is when you find your identity in Christ and when you understand who God when God tells you who you are and what He does for you, it changes your life completely, because it's not your limited human thinking of who you are, but it's God's supernatural and infinite promise to you. And when you trust that promise, it changes your life.
When you become a child of God and you basically take on this new identity as His child, you become a stranger to where we live. I mean, I haven't seen the movie, but it must have been a struggle for her living in that Creed environment and knowing that, hold on, there's a part of me that doesn't belong.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good parallel to where we are today as Christians, living in the world, but not really belonging to the world. We have to walk against the flow. We have to go fight against different views that aren't exactly aligned to what the Bible says. And sometimes, yes, I like what you guys have pointed out. Just declaring that identity to yourself breaks those chains and helps us go against the flow of whatever the world is telling us to do.
Yeah.
I want to share this verse, and this is actually from the Bible. It's in 1 John 3:1. And I don't know which version this is, but it says, "What marvelous love the Father has extended to us. Just look at it. We're called children of God. That's who we really are."
Yeah, and that's very rooted in identity, because that's not only something that you can that you say every once in a while, but it's who you are, and constantly reminding yourself of who you are is something that will bring about, positive things moving forward. We had this thing, David and Lambo, we were talking about this before. We had this, discussion about our New Year's resolutions, and one of the things that we thought to be good to help us do our New Year's resolution is find a way to make that thing you want to change as your identity. So something David taught me was, hey, if you want to go to the gym every day, then start telling yourself, hey, I am a gym buff. I am somebody who likes going to the gym. If you want to be a reader, just keep telling yourself, I am a reader, and start telling other people that as well. And it's not really faking it, because it's a behavior that you want to achieve, and constantly reminding yourself of who you are will bring about good things, and most especially your identity, not only in yourself, but in God. That is the most important thing to have.
And what Josh said is actually very scientific, because the moment you start telling yourself these things, your brain really does change the way I don't know the scientific
neural
term, but
pathways,
the pathways change, and you actually begin to reshape your brain to start believing what you're proclaiming. And so if you say, I am a gym buff, and you keep saying it, you will become that, and you will be committed, and you will stay committed to it. And the same applies to anything in our lives. When we find our identity in Christ, and when we start saying that, not only are we aided by the supernatural power of the Holy Spirit, but our minds and our brains begin to physically change in order to fulfill what we are proclaiming.
I would like to add to that, because just this afternoon, I took my class to this neuropsychologist. And so we studied and we learned that the brain is really plastic. And so it can change. And I want to link that to this Bible verse that it's in Romans 12 verse 2. And it says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." Now think about that. You will know the will of God, and it's good. It's good for you. It's acceptable. That means it's really something that you should strive for, and it's perfect. It's perfect. I don't know how to explain
Yeah.
it. because
So
it's perfect.
I like how it says that like it can transform who you think you are now. When you put your identity in God, it will transform. You are like a new person, and I just really want to drill that point. Who you say you are, that narrative you tell yourself every single day when you wake up, is something that will either haunt you or like bless you because of how you see yourself.
And I just want to point that you don't only have to tell that to yourself. You can tell that to the face of all the lies that the enemy is
Yeah.
blasting at you. I like the movie. I guess the picture the movie
Yeah.
painted as she was disintegrating the enemy. She
said
proclaimed her
that she's
identity.
human. Yeah.
And sometimes in this world, we may be bombarded by lies that we are led to believe. But when you're starting to believe those lies, look that lie on the
And
face
declare your
and declare
identity.
at the top of your lungs, "I am a child of God."
Yes.
That is the lie.
You should listen to this song called "Voice of Truth."
A
Yeah,
very very
Voice of
old
Truth.
song, but yeah, it's a very
Very
good
beautiful.
song. Yeah, but unfortunately, it's time for us to wrap up this discussion. It was a very good discussion, and it was like very rich in more ways than one. But like before that, I just want to recap the things that we had talked about. So the first thing is, don't abandon your emotions. The emotions are something that is there. It has a purpose. It matters how we use the emotions, how we manifest it in our lives. Not that it's not there at all, but more on how we choose to channel it. The second is, our past shouldn't simply be forgotten. We need to learn from our mistakes, and we should repeat our successes. So where we did well before, just continue to repeat it, and where we messed up, try to find a way to correct it. And lastly, our identity is important. What we tell ourselves every single day, do you consider yourself a failure or simply someone who had failed at something? Because that will spell the difference between how you can face the future well, or if you're going to face it really badly. And I guess as we wrap up, I just want to invite everyone. This is our pilot episode for our podcast, #Life Choices, and invite you to join us. We're going to be posting our podcast every Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So if you guys want more of this, we're going. So I guess maybe just a brief overview of our podcast. So every Monday we have this thing called, as we said, Movie Mondays, where we talk about movies, what we can learn from them. Second is we have Table Talk Thursdays, where we will share stories, something that happened in our lives, something that we read about, or maybe thought-provoking questions that we want to ask each other. That's Table Talk Thursdays. And lastly, Situation Saturdays, wherein we will discuss a situation that someone is facing, and we'll all put ourselves in the shoes of that person and ask, if I was in his or her situation, what would I do? So thank you for listening to our introductory episode of our podcast. And I just want to wrap things up with a reminder that in this life, we have no choice but to make choices. So choose wisely. See you in the next podcast.